Parents, welcome. Today we're going to have a conversation about the targeted parents' perspectives. And I know that for you, as a targeted parent, you are very familiar with this. These are the kind of things that you are experiencing every day. You know what it's like. You know the pain that you're going through. You're suffering, and the problem is the rest of the world is oblivious to this pain. And because of this lack of awareness, that we have such a lack of resources and lack of appropriate intervention, appropriate support system for targeted parents. And that's why I thought today's talk is so important. We have with us Dr. Mandy Matthewson from University of Tasmania. She's a clinical psychologist as well as a professor of psychology. And she has done a lot of research on the perspective, the experience of the targeted parents, and also various other aspects, including like remedies and looking at alienated children, as well as reunification. So today I'm really excited to have her with us to ask her about this, because I think that her research is very important in bringing the science and the light into this problem. And if we can get the proper recognition to this problem, then we can start to look for resources. We can actually demand justice. We can actually go and ask for the kind of resources out there, because if we don't have the kind of recognition that we need, then we're not going to be able to get the kind of support like government funding or anything like that. And you've noticed, like, you have hotlines for suicidal, you have support for gay and lesbian support group, you have domestic violence shelter, you have all that kind of support, and that's really important. But there's no hotlines, there's no shelter, there's nowhere for targeted parents to turn to. And that's why it's so important to be able to recognize this and be able to bring data, bring science, to be able to demonstrate the real pain and suffering that parents are going through. So thank you so much, Dr. Matthewson. Thank you for being here today. I've gone through a lot of your research, and I really had a lot of questions because I've noticed you've done so much work. And hi, Morgan, thank you so much for being in the room. I don't know where you're calling from, and if you are an alienated parent, please let us know. And if you could share this event. So Dr. Matthewson, so you've done multiple research on the experience of targeted parents. I know it's not a surprise for the audience here, but could you tell us about the research that you did and what the outcomes of that?
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak today. And yes, I'm happy to talk about the research. So our research program started back in 2014, 2015, and it started after I was working in clinical practice, and I was working with families who were experiencing parental alienation. I didn't know what it was until I conducted some research and spoke with colleagues, and then realised that more research was needed. And so I am fortunate enough to work in both clinical practice and in academia, and so I started setting up this research program. We started with a simple survey. We wanted to know experiences. We wanted to know what kinds of alienation tactics parents had experienced. We wanted to know the impact on their mental health. And at the end of the survey, we had a little spot where parents could tell us anything that they thought we should know. And we were inundated. We thought we'd be lucky to get a small number, but we were swamped. And we were sharing it through social media, and we were just hit with so many stories. And when we looked at the survey data, when people filled in the last question, anything you would like to tell us, we had reams and reams and reams of responses. It was just overwhelming. And then we realised that we were doing something incredibly important. And so we found some interesting things with that particular study. And both studies have been published, so you can have a read. We found that certainly parental alienation has a huge impact on parents' psychological well-being. We found that parents are being exposed to numerous alienation tactics. We found that the severity of the alienation tactics appeared to be greater, or their experience was worse when it was an alienated mother than a father, and that's not to diminish the awful experience of either parent, but that was a surprise. We were also quite overwhelmed by the number of mothers who came and spoke up in the research as well, because to date the research had really focused on the experience of fathers to a large extent, so to hear from the mothers was incredibly powerful too. And then we just read so many heartbreaking stories in the last question of the survey. And from my work since, all of that parallels everything that we already know about being alienated from a child, all the stories of grief, trauma, systems abuse, going through systems to try and get a resolution that actually make things worse. So great financial losses, loss of family, loss of children, really devastating. So our next task was to rework the survey to ask more questions, and then we sent that survey out again, and we had many more responses. So many people. We are still wading through that data. It was so big. So more to come on that front.
Wow.
But that one was focusing on the finding that a lot of the parents who have completed our survey were talking about having been exposed to family violence before and after family separation. And so we wanted to find out more about that. We also started our large project where we interviewed targeted parents. So we interviewed 93. We were able to transcribe 89 of them. There were some difficulties with some of the interviews, and unfortunately we couldn't include them all, so we have 89. And we've published data from 54 of those interviews already, and we heard stories of trauma, family violence before and after separation. We heard about something that you talked about at the beginning, that disenfranchised grief of that ambiguous loss. So a loss that is not publicly recognised or acknowledged, and very difficult to grieve under those circumstances. So that's the targeted parent research.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, I think one of the publications you said that there are 6 sub-themes that came out from the study in terms of the experiences, right? What was they? And it seemed that you also have done study in Turkey, which show the same outcome, essentially, right? Which shows that really the experience is universal. It doesn't matter if you're in America or any country. It's really essentially all the targeted parents experience the same type of the tactics as well as the implications, right?
Yes, so that's important. A lot of the research has come out of mostly the US and some other countries, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. And so our study really our research has really tried to get a broad international sample as best as we can. And yes, we've just recently had an article published with my colleagues from Turkey. I will admit that they collected the data, they drove the research, and my contribution to that was to assist in making sure the article was written in English. But that is a very important study, and we have another study from Turkey under review, so more to come. Oh, wow. And that it shows just the same experiences. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, the stories are unfortunately the same.
So you mentioned like emotional, abuse, sense of emotional abuse, behavioral, finances, physical, social. So all of these really, what you're saying is what the parents are experiencing is a form of domestic violence, right? It's all essentially directed to, really what it's saying is parental alienation is a form of family violence.
That's exactly what I'm saying, and that's the position that I take. I think alienating behaviours are a form of family violence and child abuse. I think the core component is coercive control, and it's really great to see in the research, and certainly here in Australia in the media, there is more discussion about what coercive control is. My colleague Jennifer Harman and I had published in a book, so Demosthenes and William Burnett's book, Parental, Alienation, Science and Law, we have a chapter that talks about how this is family violence.
Right, exactly, yeah. So for parents that haven't seen it, we did an interview with Dr. Jennifer Harman. We also interviewed Dr. William Burnett to talk about the book Parental, Alienation, Family and Law that Dr. Matthewson just mentioned about. I thought also another thing that was really important that you discovered was that parents, this is not something that just happened after the separation or the divorce, right? There have always been, very commonly, parents already experience this sort of behavior, the family violence behavior way before the separation, right?
Certainly, from the interviews and from the surveys that we've conducted, it certainly looks like there are these sort of coercive controlling behaviours, among other types of abusive behaviours, tend to predate the family separation. And sometimes it's that family violence that occurred that triggered the separation, or sometimes it's something completely unrelated. And often, targeted parents, certainly we found through our interviews, they described to us what was clearly family violence having occurred before separation, but they just hadn't realised that that's what it was because they were just too busy surviving, being in the midst of it. I remember doing one interview, hearing a story of family violence before separation, and I presented that, I reflected that back to the person I was interviewing, and they were still uncertain as to whether it was family violence they'd experienced, when certainly it fits every definition of it.
Yeah, that's a problem with victims, right? A lot of the time, victims have been conditioned to get used to, the abuse. And so a lot of the time, victims don't recognize that they are victims. And this happens for adults as well as the children, the alienated children. They are victims of the abuse, and they don't know that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then
behaviours that are very abnormal, and then they become normalised.
Right. And then the other things that you've also found was you mentioned about the parents, the targeted parents' view about the system. Would you talk about that? Like, how do they feel about the healthcare or the court system?
So in terms of both, but I'll start with the court system. I think a lot of parents go to the court system of the belief that that's going to help solve the problem, and quite rightly so, they go in with that view, but unfortunately they find a system grossly lacking in resources, grossly lacking in understanding of the problem, and they end up encountering a system that is very different to what they were expecting. It can be very uncaring, it can be further damaging, because you go in looking for a solution, but you end up in further adversarial position, and that takes a very long time. It's very ugly, it's very damaging for all involved, and often at the end of it, the solution that parents were after isn't found, and a lot of money's been spent.
Right.
And certainly when parents go to mental health practitioners for support, many mental health practitioners, like myself when I first started in this work, had absolutely no idea what had walked through my door in terms of the difficulties and the challenges. And so the solutions are not easy to find in the systems we have.
Yeah, and so I want to thank Amanda. She has shared this in her stream as well as in Mini Mini Mo Foundation, which you are a part of. Jason Johns, thank you so much for sharing this, and Justin, thank you, you guys, thank you so much for sharing. So parents feel that they don't get the support that they needed. What do you think contributed to this? Is it because of the lack of awareness, lack of resources, or is this a blatant ignorance of this?
I would like to think that it's lack of resources, there is lack of knowledge, and I think sometimes practitioners have their particular views and their particular theoretical and research persuasions, and they stay within that particular field or area, and then can find it challenging when they encounter something very different or fundamentally different to that view. But certainly I'll speak to the Australian experience. We do have a legal system that is seriously underfunded and under-resourced, and I think all involved really struggle with that. And yeah, it doesn't work for these very complicated cases. They're very lengthy in process, and we know that time favours the alienating parent.
Right.
So it just doesn't.
Right, and we found that because these cases are so counterintuitive that people will misunderstand this. When they see a child reject a parent, they tend to assume that something is wrong with that parent. Something is, that parent has been abusive or something. Right? And
yes.
the lack of awareness is a huge problem, lack of knowledge, like you mentioned. So there was one particular, and you did mention it, about like the study about gender. I thought that was really interesting. And you kind of touched on it a little bit. Would you expand on that, about the gender of the targeted parents and the severity of the experience?
Yeah, so the alienated or the targeted mothers in our study, so the Barmer et al. Study, she and Barmer was the first author, we found that the mothers reported greater severity of alienation tactics, exposure to alienation tactics, than did fathers. And then that was consistent with another study we found that suggested that alienating mothers and fathers use slightly different tactics, and alienating fathers can be very overtly aggressive in their approach, whereas alienating mothers can be more underhanded, if you like, in their approach. So there might be differences in the way alienating mothers and fathers conduct their business of alienation, essentially.
Wow.
Nonetheless, what both parents were experiencing was very distressing for them, and we saw that there were high levels of distress in both groups. And when we interviewed the parents, we found some differences in the way they coped and their experience of family violence, but nonetheless both groups, the mothers and the fathers, so the targeted mothers and the fathers, were reporting that they had experienced some form of family violence before or after.
So you mentioned about severity. Would you tell us, like, how do you measure this severity, or how do you quantify or even qualify it?
So in the first study, we developed a survey where we had reviewed the literature to try and come up with what are the sorts of main tactics that you might see in parental alienation. And we developed a short list of around 13 tactics that a parent might experience in the alienation process. And then we developed a survey where they could indicate if they had experienced any of those tactics and how severely they had experienced on a rating scale. And so if they had experienced it, then they rated the severity of it.
I see. Okay.
And so that's how we got the idea. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So it's their perceived experience as to
yes.
how severe. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And then you also, I think in the same study you did on the age of the children. Or what did you find?
Now, this study was a while ago, and I'm going to get it up so I get it right.
All right, thank you.
Bear with me.
Thank you. No, take your time.
No, we were talking about the Barmer study, yeah?
I don't remember which one it was. I just have my notes here where I saw it's the same study that you found that targeted mother experienced significantly higher severity of exposure to parental alienation than targeted father. It's the same study, yeah.
From memory, I've got the study up and I'm just trying to find the right bit. From memory, we found that if you kind of consider susceptibility of alienation, that female children tended to be more susceptible than male children.
Oh, wow.
And around that kind of pre-adolescent, early adolescent phase, from memory, but I just want to double check because I don't want to mislead anybody.
Yeah, I think that pretty consistent with what I have read and also what I have found. I mean, we have interviewed over 700 parents and over 200 adult children, and yeah, we do find that I think the most onset is, I think if the children under 6 years old, they are less likely to pick up on the alienating behavior, so they just kind of go and communicating back and forth the message without sort of taking it in. But then beyond that point, they started to pick it, and then it get worse when they get into teenagers, like from 9 to 12. Like 12 is a very difficult age. I find that most parents said when the children get about 12 to 17, that just get really severe. So yeah, so
Yeah.
it seemed that you, but it's interesting. You said that daughters tends to be more likely to be victims of this. That's interesting.
Yes, and obviously we need to conduct more research to find out why that might be the case.
Yeah.
But if we look at our understanding of psychosocial development and how it's different between males and females, then it could be argued that maybe female children tend to be more interested in pleasing a parent, and therefore, as a result of that, more able to be caught up in a very enmeshed relationship with the alienating parent, and therefore more easily able to be alienated and have that sort of what some researchers describe as that brainwashing process.
Right. And then you also look into remedies, right? You have done reviews on different remedies. What have you found that have been reported to be effective in, improving the condition or fixing parental alienation?
So we've got a couple of studies here. We've got some where we've looked at what we've found with the targeted parents, and we've considered ways that practitioners can support targeted parents. But we also conducted a systematic literature review on what are the evidence-based interventions for resolving parental alienation. And with that, we found that when you're looking at severe cases of parental alienation and it's been assessed and determined that indeed parental alienation is occurring here, then it's best to treat it in a way that might be similar to how you might treat any other case of child abuse, where the child is then put in the care of the safer parent, so the targeted parent. They are supported in that process therapeutically or with some sort of family intervention. And then the alienating parent is given the opportunity to, be supported and work through their particular difficulties that has led to the alienation process starting. And then once they've achieved certain therapeutic goals, the alienating parent has an opportunity to slowly have some contact or resume some contact with the child if it's safe to do so and see if that's possible. So the idea is not about reverse alienation or splitting families further apart. It's giving this opportunity to address the dynamics, change it, stop it, and then try and rebuild.
So the court really play a really important role in fixing this problem, right?
Absolutely, because often the goals of the intervention are counter to the wishes of the alienating parent. So they need an external motivator to participate, and that needs to be in the form of a court order with court-ordered consequences for non-compliance. So you really need to have good collaboration between the practitioners who do these interventions that normally are grounded in psychology and science, and you need the court to provide the structure and the orders and the consequences around that as well. So you need that collaboration, it's vital.
So there have been some arguments by people out there that said, oh, now you are separating the child from the alienating parent, the alienators. So now it could be seriously damaging for the child, and sometimes the child even threatened to self-harm or something like that if they get separated from. Have you seen in your study where that is true, that it could be damaging for the child to be separated from the alienating parents?
The research suggests that if you keep the child with the alienating parent, it does more harm than good, because if you consider parental alienation as a form of family violence and child abuse, then you are keeping a child in the care of an abusive parent, and the long-term outcomes for that child are not great. But if you remove the child from that parent temporarily and put them in the care of the targeted parent, who is considered the safer parent, the parent who's able to provide a more stable environment and support them in that process, then the long-term outcomes for the children are better.
Right.
And there are some studies showing that, and we need more research to show that. And yes, in that period of time, that short period of time when the transfer of custody occurs, there can be some temporary distress. But once that child is safe and supported, that distress diminishes very quickly. I have seen that process right before my eyes, and the switch from an alienated child to one who is now safe is very quick. It's very powerful to watch, and it's very real. And I've worked with children who have made that switch, and then I've continued to work with them after that switch, and I can see that their life trajectory is so much better.
Right. It's so consistent with everything that we've seen with like other experts that we interview. The same, like you mentioned, like the child is under so much pressure that was pushed on them by the alienators in this loyalty conflict, that the child just stuck there. But if the court can help alleviate that pressure, then it's just almost instant. The rebonding could happen immediately. And yeah, we talked to parents, some parents that said, I saw my daughter cry for an hour, and then she came down and hugged me and lie down on the couch and watch TV with me. And we have parents that talk about the first day she was cold, the next day she cried and apologized and said she loved me and everything. We hear this story over and over. So yeah, it's definitely like I think the problem is to get the system to recognize the problem and to acknowledge that it's a form of child abuse and the form of domestic violence. And I think those are the key things. If the system doesn't recognize that as something dangerous, then the system doesn't put in the right intervention, unfortunately. And so I know that you also have done study on adult alienated children. Could you talk about, and you did mention this, the ramifications on the children's lives. And I know you guys haven't picked up question in the chat room. I apologize. We're going to go through the question in a little bit. I just have all these questions I want to make sure I cover before I go to your question, but I'll definitely pick it up. And thank you, Clayton, for sharing this, and Tina and Paul, thank you guys for sharing, and Donna, thank you so much for sharing this. And yeah, we have a lot of questions in the chat room. Feel free to keep adding the question. I will try to scroll through in a bit. Yeah, so yeah, if you could talk about the impact on the adult children of parental alienation. Yeah.
I would say that this study is one of our most important pieces of work that we've conducted so far, and it was one of the most powerful ones that we have conducted, and all of us in the lab involved were affected by the research, I'd have to say. We started off with a small sample. We had around 10 adults who had experienced alienation through their childhood. We've just finished interviewing another 10. We have published the research from the first 10. We had a by and large international sample, so we had people from various places around the world. And essentially what we heard were really significant stories of trauma and abuse perpetrated, or that the participants said was perpetrated by the alienating parent. And you named the abuse. It was something that they had experienced, particularly emotional abuse. There was physical abuse. There were some stories of sexual abuse. It was just heartbreaking. And of course, like any child who experiences abuse during childhood, that just forever changed the trajectory of their lives. And so many were struggling with all the lost opportunities that they had. So lost opportunities with stable relationships, lost opportunities educationally, vocationally. It was just devastating. But we did hear some stories of hope and the ways that some had managed to cope with their experience and the things that they were trying to do to make their current situation and their futures better.
Yeah,
and certainly
actually,
those who had found good support,
yeah.
good, strong, healthy relationships around them made all the difference.
Right. I actually forgot to touch on that, the same thing that I saw in your study, which was you found that despite all the painful and suffering that alienated parents have experienced, you found that the characteristic of the target parents that they still all turn and look for coping strategies, right? They all rise up. Would you talk about that a little bit and what kind of things that they have picked up in order to cope?
Yes, that was another really key finding of the research for the targeted parents. I think one of the key things that we found was to help with coping, targeted parents sought out information. They just got armed with knowledge, and knowledge is power, and that's what we found with the people we interviewed. And then they went seeking out the right kinds of supports that they needed. If they couldn't find the right supports, they created it. So how many targeted parents or people who have been alienated through childhood have now set up organisations? And you just mentioned Amanda, and I would like to give a shout out to Amanda Sillers, who has become an amazing colleague and friend of mine. So she's the founding director of the Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo Foundation here in Australia. We support people in Australia and people internationally of the online support group. We've been running targeted parent workshops. And so when you find the right support, it's really powerful, and many people who couldn't find it created it, like Amanda. And Amanda has been an amazing supporter of our research. So if you're listening to this, Amanda, thank you so much. Amazing person. Amanda also does some consultancy work as well, so one-on-one work with parents when needed, because there are so few of us. There is a greater need. The need outweighs the supply of support that can be provided. So we provide that support where we can. So yes, many parents have either found the support or they've created the support they've needed, but certainly being armed up with knowledge has been key. And then whatever coping strategies help, targeted parents will find and use. And so things like exercise, healthy eating, getting out in nature, finding the right psychologist or counsellor or consultant or life coach or whoever who can just support them and hold that space when they need to express that distress that they can't express anywhere else has been really important. And similarly for the adults who are alienated through childhood, it's just that knowledge is power in getting the right supports in place.
Yeah, so you guys are the heroes, really. Really, I've seen you guys. I mean, you are here listening to this because you're looking for knowledge. You are empowered. So really, you guys are the heroes. Yeah, and Amanda said in the chat room, thank you, Mandy. So yeah, and so definitely. And then you mentioned even, and the children do the same thing. They also seeking help. So I wanted to also let everyone know that we recently started a new organization, and we haven't really bring a lot of public information yet, but we're going to be introduced a lot more information. And the organization is called the Hero Circle. The Hero Circle is an alliances of adult children of parental alienation. So the entire organization is just consists of adult children of parental alienation, and the goal is really, I feel that there's all these debates about parental alienation, whether it's real, whether it's there's enough support, research in it. whether it's pseudoscience or whatever. I feel like all of these debates is like there's an undercurrent that this is about the battles between parents, but people seem to overlook and forget the voice of the children. Really, at the end of the day, this is about the children, and we don't have a pure voice of the children, and that's why we decided to create this organization, because we believe that there has to be a pure voice of just the children. The adult children have nothing to fight for. They're not here to fight for custody. They're not here to try to reduce child support. They're not trying to get back, to get ahead of their exes. None of those things. And they are now adults, so they're not trying to do anything. They are here just to speak up about their experiences, and so that's why we created this organization. And coming up, there's going to be different things that we're going to do, including like bringing public awareness and research and support for all these different legislation that are taking place right now that seem to be misled in terms of what parental alienation is. So I just want to let everyone know that we're going to have more of that coming. Okay,
that
so
sounds great. Can I just make another little point there? Well, yeah. 2 little points.
Yes, please.
I also want to give a little shout out to another colleague of mine that I've come to know in the last few months is Cindy Hirsch, with the International Support Network of Alienated Families, and the excellent work they're doing there. And they have a grief program, and they're based in the Northern Hemisphere, and I think they do some great work. It sounds like, from what you are saying, there's some more support programs becoming available, and that's so important. But I will say that there are a number of people out there who are creating supports or support programs or organisations with all the right intentions, but they may not necessarily provide the support that is needed, because either the people who have created these organisations are still struggling themselves and may not realise that they're not in the best place to provide support. Yeah. So I would encourage targeted parents to be very critical of the supports that they encounter. So check, is it providing what I need? Is it going to do more good than harm? Who is organising it? Who's behind it? And are they the right kinds of people? Because there are some people with other intentions out there.
Right. Unfortunately, yeah, because we have, and we see this quite a bit with, so we have a private Facebook group, and we do see this quite a lot, is different people will go in and try to promote their services or their, intentions, like you mentioned, but then it's very hard for us to support things that we don't get a chance to vet, and then we don't want parents to be misled by potentially harmful services or things like that may take advantage of them.
And I was
go ahead.
So I've highlighted 2 organisations that I know of that I'm very happy to say yes, they provide great support, and I know there are many other really good ones out there. So
yeah. We actually do have an interview with Cindy coming up. I think we do plan. Yeah, we do plan to do that. We do have an advocate series where we interview different organizations that we believe in. So I know that you also did a study on reunification, where you study reunification from adult children with alienated parents. What was the finding of that?
So we conducted a study where we interviewed targeted parents who had reunified with their children who were now adults, and we also interviewed the adults who were alienated during childhood who had also reunified, and in some cases we could get the dyad, so the parent-child dyad. In other cases we couldn't, so we just interviewed them anyway. We haven't published this one yet, so I need to be mindful of how much information I'm allowed to provide.
Oh, I understand.
We are madly typing to get that out. And of course the publication process is a very long one. But we have presented some of the preliminary findings at conferences. And what we found is that it is another process for all involved, and sometimes a long process that really needs to be driven by the adult child, where they will make approaches, test the waters, see if it's safe, and then they'll retreat. And then they'll just keep doing this sort of approach withdrawal cycle for quite some time. And that can be very difficult for targeted parents, and it's just an emotional roller coaster where they really need to get the right support and go at their child's pace. But there's more to come, lots more to come on that front.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so that's the thing, because a lot of parents don't realize that it's a whole journey still. A lot of the times they're like, oh, I just want to be able to reach out to my children. Well, even if they do reach out at that point, it's not the ending yet. It's actually just the beginning, right? It's still potentially a very long journey, and adjusting that kind of expectation is very important so that you can embrace that journey.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can scroll through the question and see if we can pick up some questions here. Okay, so let's see. We have Mary said, 15 years alienated, and now he brought me back to court saying I wanted nothing to do with our now pre-adult children. The most horrifying thing a man could do to hate me. Well, that's kind of odd, because now the children are adults, so I'm not sure how the court is intervening with that. Okay, Martin said, I think there are many sad stories out there. Yes, definitely. We know that for fact, yeah. Christine said it affects the entire family severely. Yes. Have you done any study? Actually, that's a good, interesting point. Have you done studies on the extended family? Because obviously, when this happens, when alienation happens, it's severe. It is severe, like the whole entire side of the family, right? Have you got a chance to study, like, or do you plan to, with grandparents and extended family?
Yeah, so we have interviewed a group of grandparents, and in this study they were the parents of the targeted parents. We also recognise that sometimes parents of the alienating parent can also be alienated, just to make it more complicated.
Oh, wow.
But we have interviewed a group of grandparents, so parents of the targeted parents, and there's again madly typing to get that out there. But their experience is very similar to the experience of targeted parents, but made harder because they are trying to do what's best for their grandchildren and their child. So, but there's more to come about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and that's an interesting point, right? Because yeah, they don't just, it's not just their children, but their grandchildren. And for a lot of people, when it comes to grandchildren, it's like, okay, you're raising your children, and a lot of the time you cannot be perfect parents, so you have a lot of regrets. So when it comes to your grandchildren, you're like, okay, now I have a chance to be the, like really taking care of my grandchildren. And then when that grandchild is taken away from them, now the heartbreak is just, yeah, devastating, and it's a different kind of heartbreak, right? Okay, so we have Joseph said, so you're saying that your study results came from the US and found more women than men have been alienated. No, I don't think that's exactly what it is. Her study was on gender, as in the severity, the experience for targeted parents. Do you want to clarify this one?
Yeah, so our study had an international sample, and we had targeted mothers and fathers, and we were expecting that there would be more targeted fathers than mothers, but we had around about 50% were fathers, 50% were mothers approximately. And when we looked at the ratings of the severity of the tactics, the mothers reported a higher severity of the tactics than did fathers. And I will make the point that doesn't diminish the seriousness of the experience of the parents. It just points to the possibility that alienating mothers and fathers use different tactics that have different sorts of impacts, I guess.
Yeah, and it could possibly be that the targeted parents experience it differently based on their gender, right?
Absolutely, it may be, yes. Absolutely, good point.
So Donna said, absolutely agree that parental alienation is a form of family violence. Yes, we all experience that. Amanda posted a link to the book, Parental Alienation, Science and Law. So if anyone was curious, you can check that in the chat room. Michael said, Australia here living the nightmare for 2 years now. Court system is so long and costly, and the amount of loopholes that allow the alienation to continue is heartbreaking. No consequences for being found out, making false allegation. The system allows further allegation once previous allegation are exhausted. Kids' voice are not being heard. Yes, we found that one of the sort of strategies that alienating parents use a lot is to create false allegation in court and then prolong this process by stacking multiple allegations one after another, and it's sort of like creating sort of smoke and mirror effects that making it difficult for the court to see, discern what is true and what's not true. Do you have any comment on this?
Yes, this is an alienation tactic that we've seen, and it's a very complex one and a very serious one, because whenever an allegation of family violence is made, it has to be taken seriously. It has to be assessed, because you have to determine what it is. Is it indeed that family violence has occurred, or is this allegation one that is being used as an alienation tactic? And that's not always easy to work out. And when you consider the way that the court system operates, particularly in Australia, when there's so many people going there and not enough resources, there's not always enough time devoted to working out what's really going on. And it requires a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge on the part of the single experts who are appointed to try and work this out. Here in Australia, we had an inquiry, a Senate inquiry, Joint Senate Committee, I can't remember the long name.
Right.
And one of the outcomes of that
Yeah.
was that it's really important that single experts and indeed members of the judiciary are trained in these sorts of psychological theories, etc., to be able to identify what is a true allegation from a false allegation. It's an alienation tactic.
Right. So there was a I would say misinformation push out there where people say that when a mother go to court and claim that they was abused by the father, and then if the father then say that the mother had used parental alienation tactic, then the court will immediately give custody to the father. Now, I want to clarify that this is a huge misinformation out there. That's not correct at all. Dr. Jennifer Hammond and Dr. Lorandos have done a study and examined this and proved that this is not correct at all. So I just want to clarify that.
I'll add that we are repeating that study in Australia and looking at family court outcomes here to see what's going on in Australia.
Yeah, that's amazing. That would be really good to see. I think Dr. Hammond is doing the same study for Canada now as well. So that would be great to see all of those and try to compare how the system, how do the system recognize this. Unfortunately, one of the outcome from her last study was that when a parent make false allegation, multiple allegations, the more allegation the parent made, unfortunately, it actually, even when it's found to be false allegation, the court will less likely to take custody away from the accuser and more likely to take custody away from the accused, even when the accusation is found to be unfounded or false. And this is to do with the court trying to take a sort of like safe position, meaning they try to sort of like be cautious and, okay, we hear the allegation, we found it to be wrong, but just to be safe, we're going to give custody to the other parent instead. And unfortunately, it can lead to a serious problem, especially with situations like alienation or even other kind of abuse. You have the accusers. A lot of the time, the abuser will claim to be the victims, and if the court are not able to pick up on this, it could create really serious problem for the children. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Jonna said 3 years now. I haven't seen. Sorry. Okay, I think I'm lost track of where things are. Okay, Corina said a deeply dysfunctional family dynamic with short and long-term consequences for all involved, but with the peculiarity of using children in order to gain power and exclude the other parent. Yeah, definitely. Bob said I had 3 out of 4 of my kids alienated. 2 have thankfully come back, but haven't seen my youngest daughter in 4 years. I miss her so much. Yeah, we hear this kind of story all the time. It's really sad, but I'm glad that at least 2 of your children came back, which is really promising in getting the rest of your children back. And then Fiona said, how do we define coercive control, and how do we demonstrate it has taken place? Would you have any comment on this?
Trying to demonstrate or prove, if you like, that coercive control has taken place is really hard because it happens behind closed doors and there's typically not any witnesses, and it is quite insidious and covert, so it can be very hard. And I think certainly here in Australia the legal system is really trying to wrap their head around this, and how they can legislate against it, and there is some movement in Queensland at the moment around that.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be more to come on coercive control, so more research and more discussion about how it can be legislated against and how you can, I guess, demonstrate in a court that it's been happening to you.
Right. So right now, parents in Colorado, there's a bill that's going out trying to sort of deal with coercive control. If you are from Colorado, we would love to hear from you because we want your support. We need your help, and your voices can actually help to convince the lawmaker to make the right decision. One of the things, unfortunately, with this bill is that they try to push the definition of parental alienation out. They try to say that it's not real, that is pseudoscience, things like that. So if you are victim of parental alienation and you are from Colorado, we would love to hear from you because we definitely want to get more support. And it's absolutely about this very specific topic, coercive control, and how the court should look at that. Okay, so, and we are going to be running out of time very soon, so I'm going to just try to scroll through more. Okay, Victoria said, I am an alienated parent and haven't had my son in my life for 8 years. He's now 23 and have to fight to keep younger too from falling victim. Victoria, we had an interview with Dr. Joshua Coleman, who talks specifically about adult children, like, how to reconnect with adult children. So I would highly recommend checking that. We also interviewed Dr. Amy Baker, who also talked a little bit about how to stay connected with alienated adult children. So check out that one as well. If you go to the videos tab on our Facebook page, or you can search on our website as well, you'll get linked to the videos. Okay, Joseph said, I'm confused. Sorry. So how is it that approximately 85% of custody is awarded to a mother, but more mothers are experiencing parental alienation? Did I misunderstand? I think we clarified that we're not saying that more mothers are experiencing parental alienation. So I don't think
I think what our study is showing is that previously in the research we were hearing a lot about the experience of targeted fathers, but more recently targeted mothers have felt like they can now speak up as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a problem for both mothers and fathers. Essentially, it's a problem for the children.
Exactly, yeah.
And so we're not saying that more mothers or more fathers, we're just saying that we're now hearing from mums as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a problem across the board.
Right. It's not a gender issue. It's not a gender war or anything like that. It's both father and mother can be alienators, and both fathers and mothers can be target of parental alienation. By the way, parents, we have this poster here. If you see it, it's got information for target parents. We have it on the website if you want to just download it for yourself, for your computer. If you wanted to purchase, we have it on our website as well. We have different sizes if you like to have that. And also we have some shirts. I have one right here. It said parental alienation is child abuse. We have a few different ones, different colors, sizes as well. So check it out on our website. We are not really making money out of that. We just want to bring awareness. So really, it's just whatever our vendor provided. I don't think there's any margin on that we get. Okay, Mary said, my daughter wrote to me to go kill myself, like I was intended to and worse, so I had sent it to court. Mary, a lot of the children later that we interview, adult children, parental alienation, they regret that kind of things a lot. So really, it's when you see something like that, I know you are hurt, but think about the pain that your daughter is going to experience when she finally wake up later. So have compassion for your daughter, I would say. And we have a series of events where we interview adult children of parental alienation. We do that every month. So, you can go in and check that out. And if you are not already on our mailing list, please join our mailing list on our website, VictimToHero.com. There's one question I wonder if we could pick up. I know we ran out of time already. So Mani was saying, please address parental alienation of adult children. I think what she's trying to say is, do you have any insight into a situation where parental alienation happened when the children's already adult and the courts is no longer involved? Do you have any advice or insight into that?
It's a very different situation. I have had some experience working with that sort of dynamic through my clinical work, but I haven't looked at it through my research. I would suggest that the response is similar. It's trying to maintain easy, frequent contact and sending messages that you're there when they're ready, you support them, you love them, and just softly until they come back to you. That's the best I can suggest.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. You just can't give up on your children. It's really important. Yeah. You can't emphasize that enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time, but before we go, I'd like to do just a very quick bit of shameless self-promotion.
Please.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna continue with. See if I can scroll.
I just want to show our book.
Yeah.
Please get a copy if you can. Understanding and Managing Parental Alienation. It's written obviously by myself, by a really good colleague of mine, Janet Haynes, who is a very experienced clinical psychologist who's worked in this area for many years, and a fantastic barrister, Marcus Turnbull, here in Tasmania. It does talk about it from the Australian experience, but there's useful information here for practitioners and for those who have experienced parental alienation in one way or another. So that's another possible resource.
Thank you. So when we finish this, I'm gonna make sure that I tag the Eeny Meeny Miny Mo Foundation as well as that book, so that parents, if you want to check this video later, you can see the links on that. And when we go on the website and we post this video, we're gonna definitely post those as well, so that if you wanted to get. But yeah, Dr. Matthewson, thank you so much. It has been very insightful, and I hope that the professionals and the system can look at the outcome of your study, and hopefully we can make changes in the system to provide the support for parents. Okay.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to everybody here who listened. And I wish everybody all the best who's really struggling with this at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry. Give me